Hello everyone. In today's video, I want to talk about my favorite weapons in the Mass Effect Trilogy, more specifically Mass Effect 3 because they are a lot different compared to Mass Effect 2 and in Mass Effect 1. Now it depends if you played the original version or the remastered version of Mass Effect 1, because even though the ammo is infinite, or should I say the pulling the trigger doesn't automatically need you to reload, it's still different. So most of it in this video I'm gonna talk about the Mass Effect 3 version of all these weapons, but there'll be some exceptions though, so I expect to see those. So let's start off by saying that you won't see any pistols or heavy weapons here because I don't really care about them. The only really notable pistol is the M11 suppressor and the M6 Carnifex. And I have to say, like Rex says in the Citadel DLC, for such a small thing, it sure packs a punch. So it basically, if you want a pistol but have the damage of a sniper rifle or shotgun, just take it with you. But not really fan of pistols and neither heavy weapons, but I think we can all agree that the M920 cane is probably the most meme weapon in the series, especially if you watch those videos where the players give Garrus the M920 cane and he basically deletes everyone. Yeah, so without further ado, let's talk about my favorite weapons in the Mass Effect trilogy. Starting off with the M12 Locust, and in Mass Effect 2 you get this weapon by completing Kasumi's loyalty mission. I find this weapon to be really best on engineers and adepts, but if you don't in the collector ship, if you don't want to use assault rifles, or I don't know, maybe you want something else, or if your build lacks range, in case you need a range, it is a perfect weapon for you. And in Mass Effect 3 it's really light, especially I have to say that all submachine guns SMGs are basically the lightest type of weapons in Mass Effect 3, so they basically are the engineers and adepts' best friend, and I think even a vanguards. So it may not fire quick, but it sure has a lot of ammo, and it does decent amount of damage in general. Next up is the M9 Tempest, and here I want to say the Mass Effect 2 version of it, because I noticed this with all, I think it was called, what was that weapon called? Where are you? The M4 Shurikens. I noticed with both of them that in Mass Effect 3 you can only fire them at out auto mode, at least the Tempest, and the Shuriken only in burst mode. But in Mass Effect 2, depending if you hold the trigger or tap the trigger, it will either go burst mode or auto mode, which I think, I'm not sure if it's either a bug in the code or they did it on purpose. If it's on purpose, I'm not sure why. But anyway, this is probably my favorite submachine gun to use on the Vanguard, especially if I go for hyper aggressive playstyle alongside some other shotguns that I will mention later and whatnot. But generally I don't really use it outside when I play Vanguard, so yeah. Next up, M7 Hurricane. It's basically the same thing like the M9 Tempest, but it has higher recoil, but it deals more damage as well. And basically that's it. That's the N7 Hurricane in a nutshell. The collector SMG, this is basically how to say it. You want to give the enemy a punch they can't forget, and but you hate to reload every time or something in the middle of a fight, and you don't want it to be heavy so that you can spam your powers more and whatnot. Take the collector SMG. No, and it's also really good on the infiltrator, especially if you play an assassin playstyle of it by using tactical cloak and reserving your sniper rifle, which whatever you may use, for harder enemies to kill, like the banshees or maybe brutes or whatever else there is. Now, probably one of the most overpowered weapons in the trilogy is the M98 Widow, or basically what I like to call it, Legion's railgun. So why is this weapon overpowered? It basically deletes almost everything in one shot. I have to say headshot specifically, because body shots deal lower damage. I mean, that's an obvious one for even the most casual players when they touch up either first person or third person shooter. But I have to say that outside of soldier and infiltrator, this you do not need to take this thing with you, because it's really heavy. I think it's not worth it on any other classes except, like I said, for soldier and the infiltrator. And it's even better on infiltrator, considering the fact that when using tactical cloak it will boost your damage, and with the infiltrator in specifically you can boost your headshot damage, so why not use it on the infiltrator? Next up, the collector sniper rifle. You want something broken, you want to stay in the back and basically do almost nothing at all, or are your companions they immediately fall down or something? Just take this weapon with you and you'll have no problem anymore. But I don't really like to use it because it guarantees my victory, and I do not like easy win weapons in general. Especially in Mass Effect 3, if you notice in the campaign missions on Tuchanka and Rannoch, they give you heavy weapons, and against impossible to win fights, like in the Rannoch's finale against those 3 Get Primes. But if you know what you're doing, you can survive even on insanity difficulties. So, but if you're having trouble with the difficulty, or if you just want to get that achievement quickly out of the way to finish the game on insanity, the collector sniper rifle may be your best friend. Next up is the Widow, but the human version, the Black Widow. It's basically the same weapon as the Widow, but it deals a bit lower damage, but you can fire it more before you need to reload it. I think it has like 3 shots before you need to reload, not like the Widow where it has 1 shot, so if you miss it may cost you in the long run. So you can afford to miss a shot or 2 with a Black Widow, but not with a normal Widow. Next up is the M11 Rate. So basically this is a similar weapon to one we will discuss a bit later, which is the M22 Eviscerator. Or rather, let me just talk about both of these in one sentence. They are basically illegal shotguns because they are too good. And what's the difference between them? This one has 3 shots, this one has 2 shots. And you can use it from mid-range. I don't know if you can use it from long range, but you can use it from mid-range. So it can save your ass in fights if you use it as a last resort or something, I don't know. Next up is a Get Plasma Shotgun, probably the most unique shotgun in the series because it fires, what is it called? miniature cluster whatever, I'll just say projectiles. And especially on classes that have trouble to deal with shields, or if you want to use squad mates that are not tech expert but you want something to deal with shields, you can always use the get plasma shotgun. And I think this works. I read it somewhere, but if you use it on infiltrator, you can charge your shotgun, and and it will not break your cloak. And also, if you use or charge it, you can use a power, and the weapon will still have its maximum charge rate. So it's a really good shotgun. Next up is M27 Scimitar. Another really very good weapon for the Vanguard, but I have to say that this weapon is very good for those players that like aggressive playstyles with a soldier and a sentinel, which is me. So if you don't want to play Vanguard but you still want to play an aggressive playstyle with sentinel or soldier, just take the scimitar with you. Even though it is low damage in general, you can basically spam it in front of your enemies, so it's a nice thing to have. The next up is you are not a true Vanguard if you do not use this weapon at least once in your lifetime. Why? Because this shotgun is simply too satisfying to not use in general, especially as a Vanguard. I think it's only usable on Vanguard realistically because it weighs too much, really. But if you want this hyper aggressive playstyle like I said before with the Tempest, just use the M300 Claymore and just charge in front of your enemy and say fuck you directly to them and watch them die in front of you. Or maybe not from the shotgun itself, but from the radar of a heart attack, because you're basically a Krogan, let's say. And Krogan are really trouble to fight. So, yeah. Next up is the M7 Piranha. Piranha. I think it's how you pronounce it. I'm not really good at spelling. This decent shotgun, it has a really unique model here. I'm not sure why, but it sort of reminds me of those really old, I'm not sure how to say it, old 1920th century machine guns, you know, those that you had to spin around to shoot, not pull the trigger. Not sure why, but it's a really good weapon, especially if you know in the next mission, if you know the missions in Mass Effect 3, where you deal with a lot of husks. This is also a good weapon against them. So yeah, I don't really have anything to say else. Next up is the Rigger Carbine. Very fun weapon to use, but basically makes the game easy mode, even on Insanity. So, like I said before with a collector sniper rifle, if you want to have an easy time even on Insanity, just use the Rigger Carbine. Next up is the N7 Crusader. It's basically a sniper rifle, but in the form of a shotgun. And it's not as punishing to miss shots with it compared to a sniper rifle, but you still get punished if you missed too much with it. I think the only class I don't really recommend is probably the Vanguard, because with the Vanguard you want to be close and personal to your enemies, and there are better shotguns for that. This is more of a safe, stay in cover type of shotgun. So if you want to play more passively, this is really good for you. Next up, this Cerberus Harrier. What if you took the McDuck but you only could use it in automatic mode and make it fire really goddamn fast? You get the Cerberus area. Nothing more to say. It's what the fuck. The weapon that brings me the most nostalgia is the M7 Lancer, because even though Mass Effect 1 has its many mistakes and flaws and whatnot, it's still my favorite one in the trilogy. And every time you start the game, you always get to see the M7 Lancer. You start with the Lancer with you, even if you're not playing soldier at the start or whatnot. But it's a really fun, even though it's kind of a shitty weapon, it still feels good to use, you know what I mean? That's basically what the Lancer is in a nutshell. It's shitty, does low damage, basically penetrates dog shit, but it's fun to use, and that's what matters to me. It's fun to use. Next up, the M196 McDuck, the most broken weapon in Mass Effect 2, and for simply one reason: play soldier and use adrenaline rush. You can delete with just one magazine, if I'm not saying it wrong, with just one magazine, you can delete basically anything with it, because adrenaline rush, if I remember correctly, it boosts your damage as well, and it already does high as fuck damage. So basically, there's no reason to not use the McDuck with any class. If you want to, even though with other classes, even though it's not as stupid when you use it with the soldier, it still really packs a big deal of damage to the enemy. So it's really good to use it. Next up is the M76 Revenant. Another weapon that I really only used on the Vanguard because of its stupid recoil and has low accuracy in general. So it's better to use this at close blank range in general, and treat it more like a shotgun in a way, even though it's a machine gun. So if you get tired of using shotguns as a Vanguard, just use the Revenant. It will basically feel the same in a bit, but different to the point where you will not get bored immediately. You know what I mean? Next up, this anti-synthetic rifle. It's basically what I said about the Rieger carbine, but it's in assault rifle category. It's the same shit. It basically deletes everything with a press of a button. That's what it does. And finally, we have the M92 Mantis. Basically, Garrus's weapon, iconic weapon I should say, because it's his favorite sniper rifle, I believe. Even though I'm not sure if this is an oversight or the developers really did not care, but in cutscene it shows Garrus using the Viper, and even in Mass Effect 3 when you go to talk to him you see a Viper being modified, you know, the Mantis, so it's really weird, but whatever. It's basically the Widow but a lower level. It's not as damaging as the Widow, but it's still a really good sniper rifle to use in general. And the sound when you fire this weapon, it's the best one in from all the weapons. When you just fire the Mantis, you really get excited to hear it. So yeah. So this was my opinion on the Mass Effect Trilogy weapons. If I have to choose a favorite category, obviously I go with shotguns because I'm a shotgun type of guy. Next up, SMGs, assault rifles, sniper rifles, pistols and heavy weapons. That's my order from favorite to least favorite type of weapon to use. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.